this? Why does a doctor have no face?
So I was working at this hospital called Warren General in Warren, Pennsylvania, at about 90 minutes east of Erie, Pennsylvania. I worked night shift. I am a travel physician, so this was one of the hospitals I traveled to. One night, my flow was slow, so I went down to the CCU to help the critical care doctor who was swamped. Well, that night my patient rang her call bell around 3 o'clock in the morning. She asked me, "What does she want?" I said, "What do you mean?" She replied, "The nurse that keeps coming in here and standing there in that corner." And she points to the corner behind the door. So I was like, "Oh, Ashley," the nurse I was working with, and I pointed to her. She was sitting at the nurse's station on the computer. And she says, "No, the other one." Well, there was no other one. It was just us two. Just for your information, the patient was a woman in her 50s and didn't have a history of mental illness and was not taking any meds that would make her hallucinate. So I kind of laughed, and I was like, "It's just us." And she just stares at me. So I say, "Okay, if she does it again, just yell for me and I'll come right in." Her room was 8 feet in front of the nurse's station. So about half an hour goes by, and she yells, "See? There you go again." I got up and started walking. I hear the bathroom door shut. It had been cracked open just a little bit to give her dark room a little light. I walk in and say, "See? You're dreaming. There's no one else here." She says, "No, she went into the bathroom." So I open the door, lights still on, no one in there. Looking confused, I say, "What does she look like?" Because I thought someone was messing around. It's too dark to tell. I can tell it's a woman, but she's so dark I can't really make her face out. So when she says that, I get a little weirded out. But the night ends and I forget about it. 3 months go by. I get pulled back down to the same unit. I have the same room as before. This time, a man in his early 60s is the patient. Nice guy, alert and oriented, and very polite. Night is going good. It's around 3 a.m. and his call light goes off, which means he needs something. So I walk in and he says to me, "You are my nurse, right?" And I nod my head yes. And he says, "Well, why does that lady keep coming in here and standing in the corner? What is she doing?" I almost shit myself instantly. This was 3 months later. Same room, same thing. I said to him, "Honestly, I think it's a ghost, sir." And he laughs, and I say, "You're not the first one to say that." I started telling everyone about it, and then I find out that the entire second floor has a nurse that's seen every once in a while. I guess in the 1990s, a nurse who worked up there committed suicide. She shot herself in the second floor bathroom. She was just stressed out. I'm not a believer in ghosts or spirits, but I really wish they exist. What I'm going to talk about here is my personal experience, and it was not made up. I was doing night on calls in a state children's hospital. It just went past midnight, and I was going back to the theatre to check how soon the case on the table would finish so that I could anticipate when I would get mine done. I got into the lift from the ground floor and pressed the level 4 button where the theatre was. Just as the door was about to completely close, it opened up again, as if someone put a hand in the gap to stop it. No one was there. I looked out to find out if someone was pushing a button in the lobby, but there was none. Well, this kind of thing could happen at times, I thought. The lift went up, then stopped at level 3. But nobody pressed the button for that level. No one walked in. The door closed again, and the lift brought me up to level 4. I got out and felt it was quite a weird experience. Then this came to my mind. It could be a ghost of a child who was lingering in the hospital, who just shared the lift with me. Or just a malfunction of the lift on that night. Whichever you choose to believe.
August 2019, my mom got sick. She had a stroke, diabetes, etc. So that first time mom got sick, my brother is the one who stayed with her. And the second time she got sick, I stayed with her because my brother couldn't be that patient to take care of her. My mom was being placed in a room that can fit 6 patients. There's one time I went to the canteen and brought stuff like food and smoothies. When I was in the elevator, a guy came into the elevator with me, so it was just the 2 of us. After I bought some stuff from the canteen, I went back to use the same elevator, and accidentally met him again in the same elevator as mine. With just the 2 of us in it, we talked a bit before the elevator opened again. And when the elevator opened, we heard some people screaming and crying. Me and that guy were going to the same floor. He said to me, "What happened? Why are they screaming and crying like that?" I said, "I don't know, maybe a patient just passed away? If yes, well, hopefully he rests in peace." I barely heard him say thank you, like a whisper, but I didn't mind it and said goodbye to him as I walked to my mom's room. After that little conversation, I went back to my mom's room, and the crying and screaming voices is actually coming from that room. So I'm kind of curious too about who was the person that just passed away. The nurse opens the curtains to prepare to move the body, and I'm stuck frozen when I saw the person who died was the guy that I was talking to in the elevator. After that day, I've had nightmares for a week and always have paranoia when I get into an elevator. I know this story is not that interesting, but I wanted to share it with you guys. Thank you for listening.
For some background, I've been a behavioral health nurse for about 12 years, and my first job was at a freestanding mental health facility in the south. This facility is pretty uniquely constructed, as it was originally a plantation owned by a wealthy Irishman who emigrated here sometime in the 1700s. The local plantation house is still there, and is now used as the business office, and the hospital itself was constructed to be attached to the house. If you explore the campus, there is a small graveyard with the original owner's tombstone, as well as some other family members of his. Additionally, there is a sign that says something along the lines of, "This is dedicated to the slaves that worked and died on this plantation." Anyway, one of the stories that has been passed down among the employees there for decades is that a young girl in the Irishman's family, one of his daughters or grandchildren, passed away on the plantation at a really young age, that her ghost still lingers around the house and the facility, and that there are certain patient rooms that have an unusual amount of paranormal activity. One day I was walking past one of these rooms, and in my peripheral, I saw a young girl who looked to be about 9 or 10 years old, sitting on the bed. She was wearing a colonial-looking dress appropriate for the time period in which she was alive, and looked at me directly in the eyes. When I turned to look at her, I was incredibly startled and my mind raced for a few seconds, trying to convince myself that she wasn't there. I walked a few feet past the room, gathered my courage to go back, and she had disappeared from sight. She didn't have any ethereal qualities, nothing otherworldly or strange. She literally just looked like a real person sitting right there in plain view. During my time there, I never heard of anyone else who saw her as clearly as I did. Every once in a while, one of my co-workers or a patient would experience something strange, like doors opening and slamming shut. I remember one patient in particular that ran out of his room white as a sheet, and said that while he was lying in bed, his bathroom door slammed on its own. It was so loud I heard it from the nurse's station myself. This patient was there for addiction and had no history of hallucinations. Just thought I'd share.
So, I've worked as a security officer for going on 4 years now in this hospital. It's a very old hospital, and only the ER is open 24/7. The rest of the hospital closes at 1900 hours. I've had several things happen that I simply cannot explain, but since I'm a skeptic, I always try to rationalize things. I've got several EVPs as well as have video, but don't want to self-promote, so let me know if I can safely post it. These are my true experiences and not fabricated. These are in no specific order. First story. Was coming out of my office when I spotted someone in all black at the very end of the hall. It was far enough away that I couldn't make out details. Just a black human-shaped thing. I laid eyes on it for just a second or two when it darted into a doorway, like really fast. I ran towards it and the doorway was empty and the door was locked. The only way in is with a key, and I was the only one in that part of the hospital that night. I, of course, went into the office, but no one was inside. Second story. One night, at around 200 hours, I was sitting at my desk in the security office. The office has a closet within arm's reach of where I'm sitting. Out of nowhere, there was two very loud and very distinct bangs on the closet door that sounded like it was coming from the other side. It was so distinct that I actually remember the noise coming from the upper right-hand part of the door. It nearly gave me a heart attack, and after I fell out of my chair, I opened the closet door and found nothing inside that could have fallen or hit the door. Just some old office supplies on a shelf. Still perplexed by this one the most. Third story. I was getting off the elevator on the 3rd floor of the hospital when I heard faint noises come from down one of the hallways. I followed the noise and it got louder. Turns out it was the last room down this hallway. The TV was on and set to max volume. This is an empty floor that is not being used during the day or night, so no one should be up here at any period of time. I turned down the volume on the TV and then switched it off. 2 hours later, when doing a round, the TV was on again and sent back to max volume. I repeated the routine and left. On my last round at 400 hours, I found the TV on and maxed out again. This time, I just unplugged it. Fourth story. During my night shifts, when making rounds, I would routinely get the feeling as if I'm being followed or watched. After looking into EVPs on YouTube, I decided to start recording during my rounds when that anxiety feeling hits me. I have caught both male and female voices on these videos. I can post a link or DM you if you want. I'm not a YouTuber or anything, so I don't care about the views. Fifth story. We have a small chapel in the hospital on the main floor. It's located in a hallway that cannot be accessed by anyone after hours. I've seen this door open a few inches by itself, It was latched, and I don't think the AC or a draft could twist the handle and unlatch the door. Another time between rounds, it was standing wide open when on a previous round it was latched shut. No idea. 6th story. This hospital had an older separate building located behind it that was once used as an end-of-a-life hospice throughout the early 1900s. It was shut down and later used as an office area for around 10 years, before being demolished altogether just 2 years ago. It was 2 floors and did have an elevator. After it was demolished, for about 3 months afterwards, our security phone was getting several calls a week from the no longer existing elevator emergency phone. It's the button you would press if the elevator got stuck. It was always quiet on the other end, but no idea why it was ringing with that number. 7th and final story. Alone on a quiet floor, and I will sometimes hear random things fall down in random rooms, or hear doors shut that I could not locate. Heard a woman/child crying once, very softly for a minute or so, but could not locate anyone. Again, no one should have been on that floor. I'm not saying these are proof of anything paranormal. They're just an assortment of things that have happened to me that I can't explain with easy logic. I'm a skeptic, but after working here, I do keep my mind a bit more open. I will answer questions if anyone has any.
When I was admitted to Tan Tock Seng Hospital for appendicitis, I recalled a horrifying tale told by one of the Indian Amma who always came into the ward I was admitted to clean the area. Due to boredom for staying in the hospital, I befriended her, and she told me the incident that she'd encountered at the old Tan Tock Seng Hospital, which she used to work at before. The old Tan Tock Seng Hospital, as we knew it, used to be creepy, with lots of big trees. The lights were very dim and the pathway was rather spooky, unlike now. It was at that night when the Amma was pushing a trolley along the sheltered pathway in the building premises. On the left side of the pathway stood a number of big and tall trees. The sheltered pathway itself was dimly lit, making the whole place look totally eerie. It was at this moment the Amma suddenly caught something moving about among the trees. The movement indicates that someone or something was running from one tree to another at top speed in a funny and strange running motion. The Amma thoughtlessly stopped and tried to focus her eyes on the area by staring at it. Finally, she caught a glimpse of the shape. The figure looked like a man, and he seemed to be holding a fan similar to one that people use to fan a satay. But the strange thing was, he had incredibly long legs, 2 times the length of normal human legs, and the creature was playing peekaboo with the Amma. It was so disturbing that the Amma left her trolley there and ran away from that place. She asked someone to collect the trolley later on. The Amma related the incident to a security guard, and the guard explained to her that it was probably a hantu gala, or pole ghost. I'm not sure if it meant any harm or not. Some ghosts are always there where they died, and they become famous ghosts. My friend's aunt was working midnight shift at the hospital one quiet night. She'd been hearing things about the dancing ghost from a lot of her colleagues, but she waved it off, saying that she did not believe in such things. But apparently this famous ghost haunted the hospital ward after he died for years. So some say, the more you do not believe in them, it is more likely to happen to you. So during the night in her shift, she was writing out some roster thing at the nurse's counter. Suddenly, from the corner of her eyes, she noticed something or someone was bouncing around her counter. She immediately thought of the rumors about the dancing ghost that her colleagues were talking about. She was rather scared, but decided to look up, thinking that perhaps it's just her imagination. But when she looked up from her work, and there it was, bouncing around her coffee left and right, up and down, there was nothing to distinguish about it. It's just a translucent white man with no expression bouncing about. She was so scared she turned her head back to her phone and dared not look up. Then, the thing stopped bouncing and merely stood at the corner, just staring at her for the longest time. She was literally frozen in fear, that she kept her head bowed from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. After then, she dared to lift her head back up, since it was already daybreak. The thing has left and she finally believes. So next time, even if you do not believe what someone tells you, just keep it to yourself and not say it out, or else it will make you believe it's an existence.
Hello watchers and listeners, thank you so much for watching. As always, a big thank you to all of the Reddit users who kindly allowed me to use their stories. If you want to help support this channel, you will find links to both my Patreon and my Teespring store in the description below, so feel free to have a look. And the biggest thank you to all of you who continue to support me. I truly do appreciate it. And remember,
Papa loves you.